In this next segment, we go inside the studio with producer Jolene DeRosier, who sat down with Oswego County author Anne Callahan Allen to discuss her book, The Madame's Business. Allen stumbled across this forgotten historical Oswego County icon who had it all and lost it all after financial and physical abuse by her third husband. Allen's mission now, after bringing this historic 19th century figure to the forefront, is to restore the monument where Madame Guimarães is laid to rest. Jolene?
Yes, that's right. Once again, I am in the studio with a local author. Tonight it happens to be Anne Callahan Allen, the author of this amazing book, this historic book, The Madame's Business. First of all, hello to you and thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Tell me who the Madame is.
Okay, I will tell you her whole name.
Yes.
And it's kind of like her whole history. Her name is Malvina Dean Bessie Guimarães Seabra, but she is most often known as Madame Guimarães.
So we're going to go with Madame
We're
Guimarães
gonna go
from
with that.
this moment on. And for viewers that are watching, this historic book is about a woman, an historic figure that a lot of people aren't familiar with, but thanks to your work, our community has learned about her. Tell me what this book is about.
This book is about a young woman who was ambitious, resourceful, smart, and business savvy, and who decided that she was going to defy the conventions, really that confined women in the 19th century, and she was going to seek her own fortune, and that's exactly what she did.
Tell me a little bit about that fortune. How and why did she do this?
So she seized on an opportunity that she saw when she was living in New York City. She had escaped upstate New York and rural farm life, and she became aware of a brand new technological invention called the sewing machine, which modern day people say, who wants a sewing machine? But I have to tell you that in the mid-1800s, the sewing machine, which was actually the first home appliance, was absolutely transformational in the lives of women. Mm-hmm. And she could see that, and she connected with a company that was selling sewing machines, and she convinced them to give her 6 sample machines, and she took them to the then newly emerging market of South America, and she started selling machines, and that was where she began to build her fortune.
How did you come across this character? How did you meet her?
Well, I had heard rumors about her. The most interesting one to me was that she was the mistress of Isaac Singer, and that in return he gifted her the South American franchise for Singer sewing machines, and that's where her fortune came from. As I came to find out, that wasn't true at all. But I thought that was kind of interesting. I said, well, that sounds like a great story. But it was really a chance conversation about this elaborate monument site that she had built for herself in a historic cemetery outside of Oswego that got me really digging deeper into her story. So I had never seen the monument site, but a couple of years ago, after this conversation, I said, I think I need to go see what this looks like. And it is awe-inspiring. It's the centerpiece is a full-size bas-relief marble sculpture of Malvina, and I looked at that sculpture and at her face in particular, and I said, who is this woman? I need to know more about her. And that's really what started me on the road to find out more about her story.
And this is Riverside Cemetery?
This is Riverside Cemetery, which is a historic cemetery just outside the city of Oswego.
And it's interesting because before we wrap it up, we're going to talk about what you're doing with this particular monument. So you're at this monument, you see her face, you're inspired. When and how did you start digging to find out more about her?
Well, I did what any 21st century person would do. I Googled her and I didn't find a thing.
Right.
And I thought, how could you have an elaborate monument site like this? It was almost like a chapel kind of Mecca type site, and no one knows anything about you. So I started looking for information about her in historic newspapers. And one of the stories that I read said that the probate of her estate, which was vast, took nearly 13 years and had accumulated the most paperwork to that time in a New York courtroom. And my husband's a lawyer, and I said, why would that be? And as it turned out, she died in Oswego, and he said, well, we should go look at her will. So we went over to the Oswego County Courthouse into Surrogate's Court and looked for the will. When we opened the will safe, there was a document there, but no will. So we went over to the court clerk, and she took a look at it, and this document said something about a box. And she said, I'm not sure what this is. And then she went, oh, wait a minute. There's some boxes in this closet. I don't know when this closet was ever opened, but she walked over to this closet, walked in, and came out with a box that was like this and this deep. And she said, here you go. So we took the box and over to the reading area, and I opened it up, and it was like these papers from the 19th century, just kind of, it wasn't her ghost, but they just sort of floated up because they'd been squished for so long. And my husband was pretty intent on finding the will, but I just picked up the first document, which turned out to be testimony. Early on in this almost 13-year-long court case, and I'm reading testimony from a young man who was clearly her nephew and had been with her, and she was clearly a victim of domestic abuse, and in fact, tortured with a wild monkey. And I just looked at this and I said, I can't believe what I'm reading.
Well, that would prompt me to keep reading. And you know,
kept reading.
One thing that I want to make sure we touch on, and the reason why this is such a powerful story, this is a woman who had it all and lost it all. And you know, it's very relevant today, especially coming on the heels of the Me Too movement.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
I would agree. In fact, I say I really believe she's probably one of the first #MeToo women. And in fact, had she been living in the 20th, 21st centuries, she would have had far more resources than she did in the 19th century.
It wouldn't have taken 13 years.
It would not have taken 13 years, and actually, she wouldn't have lost so much of her fortune to this unscrupulous third husband of hers, who had the law on his side and who had convention about women staying in their lane, a woman's place, on his side. And there was no support for anyone at that point in time.
Yet, as you go through the documents and as you write about in the book, there were people well after her death that were on her side and kept fighting for her.
Oh my, there were such heroes in her story. So her, probably the most heroic was her business manager, a man named Orson Brown, who I wish I could talk to now, and in fact, he was the one who kept that box of documents that I found until, his death. And he really stayed with the fight to preserve her fortune on the U.S. side. So it was a pretty complicated situation. She had business and real estate holdings in South America, in Portugal, and in New York. And he worked tirelessly to try to preserve at least the portion of the fortune that she had in the U.S. So he was absolutely the hero of her story.
I feel like you're the hero now, because your mission, aside from writing her story and sharing it, is you are working on a project to restore that monument. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
So when I saw the monument, it was really in disrepair. And as a matter of fact, the book cover, I took that picture the first time I went to see the monument. It was the sculpture of her was wrapped almost completely in this gigantic swath of grapevine. It was eerie, it really was. So I decided I'm going to try to do some publicity about this and talk about her story, learn more about her story, and see if we can get some people in the community interested in restoring the monument site. And so my initial, I guess, goal was to try to put a story in the Historic Society newspaper newsletter, see if we could get somebody to make a donation, a mason to come and fix some of the crumbling parts of the monument. But the more I learned about her story, the more avenues I went down. And it went from, I think I'll do a story for the Historic Society newsletter, to a 159-page book. And so I decided I'm going to use this book pretty much as a PR tool. I've done a whole bunch of presentations about her and her story in the book, and the proceeds from the sale of the book go to a special fund that the Riverside Cemetery has established to get the monument restoration underway.
So if any folks are interested in learning about this story, learning about the monument restoration, you're still looking, where can they find this book to purchase, to contribute, and then we'll wrap things up.
Okay, so in addition to the Oswego having wonderful history and wonderful characters like Malvina, we have a wonderful independent bookstore called the Rivers End Bookstore. Bill Riley, his wife Mindy, his son Emil, they are so supportive of local authors. That's where the book is being sold.
Brilliant. Well, I want to thank you for coming by, telling us the story, sharing the story for folks watching, and this way they can contribute to the monument being restored. And of course, we're going to keep you apprised of this as well. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing the story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.